बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अल्लाहु अकबर, सुबहानल्लाह, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह, अस्तगफिरुल्लाह, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह, मुहम्मदुर रसूलुल्लाह। अल्लाहु अकबर, सुबहानल्लाह, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह, अस्तगफिरुल्लाह, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह, मुहम्मदुर रसूलुल्लाह। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। You are watching my YouTube channel. I am Syed. In this vlog, I am reciting the Tafhim al-Quran written by Syed Abul Maududi alayhi rahmat in English, and its recitation by Muhammad Akbar, मीरपुर सियालकोट, वेस्ट पाकिस्तान। तो इन्होंने ये किया है इसकी। तो शुरू करते हैं। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। In the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful. Preface है adapted. The meaning of the Quran follows the interpretation of Maulana Abul Maududi as contained in the Tafhim al-Quran. This work has been before the reading public for a decade or so and has elicited unqualified and universal praise because of the freshness of its approach and its clarity and force. It can be safely asserted that this work has contributed more towards understanding the Quran than any other such work in our time, but it has applied the Quranic principles to the solution of the problem of the modern age and demonstrated in a wonderful way how up to date the Quran is and how surely it matches with the time. तो मैं कहना यह है कि तफहीमुल कुरान जो है इसने इसको बहुत ज़्यादा पॉपुलरिटी हासिल हुई है तब पढ़े लिखे तबके में, क्योंकि ये कुरान जो है उसको बहुत क्लियरली उसकी तफहीम करती है और इसको बहुत ज़्यादा साफ तरीके से, वाज़ेह तरीके से जो अल्लाह ताला इंसान से चाहता है उसको बयान करती है। और मॉडर्न तबका जो है, क्योंकि उसके अंदर कुरान को समझने की, कुरान के मुताबिक कुरान को समझने की बहुत ज़्यादा प्यास है, तो उस प्यास को दूर करने के लिए अब हमने इसको उसी तफहीमुल कुरान का तर्जुमा जो है उसको इंग्लिश के अंदर करने की कोशिश की है। तो कहाँ तक कामयाब हुए हैं, वो कहते हैं कि इसका तो जवाब पब्लिक जो है, पढ़ा लिखा तबका जो है वही देगा। तो इट हैज़ हाउएवर बीन फेल्ट दैट द पीपल who do not know Urdu or are not well versed in it cannot derive any benefit from the Tafhim al-Quran. I have therefore, with a deep sense of responsibility, undertaken the delicate and difficult task of rendering this work into English under the guidance of the Maulana himself. I am fully conscious of my limitation and pray to Allah to help me in this work. कहता है कि इसकी तफहीम अल कुरान की जो इंग्लिश के अंदर मैंने जो तर्जुमा किया है, इसको बयान किया है, ये मौलाना की अबू अला मौदूदी साहब जो हैं उनकी ज़ेर निगरानी की है। The meaning of the Quran aims to fulfill the growing desires of the educated people to grasp the pure spirit of the Quran and understand the real object of its revelation. It is hoped that this work will meet the demand that has been increasing day by day in spite of the praiseworthy efforts of the translators and commentators. तो ये मीनिंग ऑफ कुरान जो है ये उसकी ज़रूरत को पूरा कर रही है जो कि पढ़े लिखे तबका जो है चाहता है कि कुरान जो है समझने के लिए उसके पास कुछ होना चाहिए। तो तकरीबन कुरान जो है उसको उनकी डिमांड को बतरीके आसन पूरा कर रही है। तो द main object of this work is to enable the English reader to understand clearly the meaning and the aim of the Quran and to impress on his mind as far as possible the same effect that it intends to produce. In order to achieve this, number 8, interpretation has been attempted instead of a literal translation, and number 2, explanatory notes have been added wherever necessary. A free explanatory translation has been adopted for two reasons. Number 1, a word-for-word translation of the Quran has already been done by several worthy persons, and that suffers suffix to serve its purpose. Number 2, it cannot fulfill the object for which this work has been undertaken. As a matter of fact, literal translation often becomes a hindrance to the full understanding of the Quran. तो कहता कि दो वजूहत हैं जिसकी वजह से मैंने लफ्ज़ी तर्जुमा छोड़ के इसकी तफहीम जो है करने की कोशिश की है, और चूँकि लफ्ज़ी तर्जुमा जो है बहुत सारे अफराद ने किया हुआ है और बहुत अच्छी तरीके से किया हुआ है, और लफ्ज़ी तर्जुमा के ज़रिए कुरान को समझने वाले लोग जो हैं उस उर्दू तर्जुमे से मदद ले सकते हैं। लेकिन मेरे नज़दीक वो लफ्ज़ी तर्जुमा जो है उस ज़रूरत को पूरा नहीं कर रहा था जो कि कुरान जो है एक फ़र्द के ऊपर डालना चाहता है। फ़र्द कोई भी हो, अच्छा फ़र्द होगा, पढ़ा लिखा होगा, तो इससे किस तरीके से मुतासर होना है उसके लिए तर्जुमानी का तरीका जो मैंने इख्तियार किया है, ताकि पढ़ा लिखा तबका जो है उस पर कुरान का वही असर मरतब हो जो कि कुरान जो कि अल्लाह ताला और नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम चाहते हैं कि इंसान के ऊपर होना चाहिए। A literal translation of the Quran suffers from many drawbacks. It is incapable of transferring the linguistic tone and sublime theme of the original Arabic text into any other language, nor can it retain the continuity of the theme so as to induce one to read it and a coherent whole and derive the same benefit from it as from a closely connected book. That is why the reader who studies its literal transferring fails to appreciate the fluency and the dynamic force of the Quran, and a skeptic begins to doubt whether it is the same book which challenged the world to produce the like of it. A literal translation suffers from another defect. It does not and cannot take into consideration the fact that the Quran was at first not a book but a living voice. Every student of the Quran Note that in the first instance it was addressed to hearers and delivered by public recitals and was not published for readers in the form of pamphlet, tracts, and booklets. And it is obvious that a literal translation cannot transfer the informal style of an oral address into the conventional style of a written work. A few instances will illustrate this point. In an address, an objection is often answered even without any reference to it, but in a written work, an objection is first cited and then answered. यानी होता यह है कि जो जो लाइटरल वर्क होता है यानी तर्जमा जो है उसमें ये होता है कि ऑब्जेक्शन जज उसको उसको पहले जवाब दिए जाते हैं रेफरेंस के बगैर और उसके बाद मोर ओवर इन रिटन वर्क द बैकग्राउंड हैज टू बी एक्सप्लेन्ड इन वर्ड्स अदरवाइज there appears to be a gap in it and it may even become unintelligible. Then in a written work a parenthesis has sometimes to be used by way of explanation. But in an address, such things are often left to the manner and suggestive action of the speaker, without showing any gap or incoherence in it. That is why even if an excellent speech is written down on paper, there appear to the casual reader many irrelevancies in it. This defect can only be removed by the adaptation of free translation by changing the informal style of an oral address into the conventional style of a written book. There is still another handicap in a literal translation. An English word is not always the exact equivalent of an Arabic word. It is therefore difficult to transfer accurately into English every shade of meaning that is contained in the Arabic word of the Quran. A free translation, however, can convey in English the meaning of an Arabic sentence as a whole. Almost all the existing English translation of the Quran suffer from the drawbacks of a literal translation. Besides these, they have two more defects. Number one, generally they follow the archaic English of the Bible, which makes the meaning of the Quran unintelligible. Number two, they isolate every verse, number it, and show it as an independent whole, and thus take away life and dynamic force out of it. It is obvious that even if an excellent discourse is discussed, decided, dissected, and written in separate, enumerated sentences, it failed to produce the effect which would have been produced by keeping it as a continuous whole. That is why a general impression has been created that the Quran lacks continuity of subject and deals with miscellaneous topics in a haphazard manner without any interconnection between the verses. Though existing English translation claims or attempts to show that there is unity of purpose in the whole of the Quran, that all its topics revolves around the central theme and never deviate from that. Each surah is a complete whole, and all its verses are interconnected. Naturally, the non-Muslim translator cannot be expected to do full justice to the Quran, to the Holy Quran, for they are generally inspired by hostile intentions of the best of tolerance because they regard the Quran to be the product of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On immigration or an inspired literature, there are others whose chief aim is to reflect rhythm, music, and the exalted tone of the original. Doubtless, the thrilling rhythm of the Quran touched the very core of the heart, but that is not the real object of the Quran. It is only a means to it. Though the Muslim translators approach the book with reverence, they do not try to remove the difficulties which are a real hindrance to its right and full understanding. The Western Muslims translators writingly or unwritingly try to explain away those things which they consider to be irreco- irreconcilable with modern thought. There are others who approach the Quran with the poet's mystic approach and help make the Quran a mystery and an enigma. Now, let us turn to the explanatory notes. Sometimes it is asked, why should any note be added to a translation? Why not let the Quran speak for itself? Indeed, the Quran does eloquently speak for itself. It did not require any note at the time of its revelation. The Holy Prophet was its living community, and the addressers was well acquainted with its style and the backgrounds of the discourses. But with the passage of time, it was felt that many things needed explanation for their fuller comprehension. And the scholar of the Quran rose to the occasion in every age and fulfilled the need. That is why explanatory notes have been added to this interpretation. They explain the difficult passage and show the continuity of the theme and the interconnection between the verses and indicate the backgrounds whenever necessary. They also contain relevant questions from the tradition of the Holy Prophet, the Bible, the Talmud, and Book of Fiqh, etc. They also discuss the problems relating to the Islamic way of the life, but avoid unnecessary controversies. In short, these notes help understanding the Quran by removing those difficulties which a modern reader encounters. In order to avoid the common defect of the existing English translation, the following devices have been adopted in the meaning of the Quran. Number 8. An attempt has been made to express the meaning of the Quran in simple, clear, and effective modern English. An explanatory translation into intelligible English has been adopted, and appropriate words have been placed within brackets to fill up the gap, which necessarily occur in every translation. Full care, however, has been taken to remain faithful to the original. Number two, anticipated difficulties have been removed and likely objection answered in the introduction to each surah. Number 10. The background of every surah has been given in its introduction, and the period, the circumstances, and the occasion of its revelation have been specified. For every discourse has its own background, and is so intense, intense intimately and, and so intimately connected with it that if it is isolated from it, its contents are liable to become unintelligible. Number four, the meanings of the text have been divided into coherent paragraphs. Number five, wherever there is no equivalent of the Arabic word in English, it has either been explained by a phrase or retained in the original. Number six, a glossary of untranslated Arabic words and a key to the correct pronunciation of Arabic names and words have been added. In this connection, it is necessary to add a word of caution. There is a general tendency to regard the English translation of the Holy Quran as the Quran. It is obviously a mishonor. It is obviously a misnomer. No translation, however good it may be, can ever take the place of the original Quran, which is its Arabic text, for it is impossible to reproduce its mistakes, its matches, its matchless, in chanting and grand style, its highly emotive and fiery language, and its forceful rhetoric. Therefore, one must turn to the original Arabic text for further appreciation and understanding. Only then will the reader himself experience how irresistibly irres- ir- irresistibly he is being moved to ecstasy, and his heart melted and stirred to noble action. The meaning of the Quran merely attempts to help the reader to understand and appreciate the Arabic text of the original Quran and is not an substitute for it. I pray to Allah to help and guide me in the achievement of this object. Note, it is intended to publish the meaning of the Quran in suitable installment. The present work is the first of the series. Suggestion for improvement will be welcomed. Muhammad Akbar, Maridpur, Sialkot, West Pakistan. चला के लेवल है तो